Until.
Okay.
Wait a minute. Let me clean my nose. Okay. We're ready. Are we ready?
Quiet on the
I'm
set.
rolling.
Roll. Action.
Hey, roll it. Okie doke.
Okay, we were.
Listen, we go back. That date was wrong. I didn't move into town until about 42, possibly early
Cut.
43.
Cut. Who the fuck is calling me?
Just pick it up and drop it down.
Go like this.
Cuchi. Venga.
That's it.
Let's go.
He's out of area. He's out of line.
Come on, we're rolling.
So, you did not move to Calle. You're telling us
To the town,
until.
late 42, early 43 instead, I think.
All right.
I remember because of something.
And you
else.
were how old? That would make you 25?
Matter, can't you count? I was 17 or 18, 17. As a matter of
25,
fact, I got
35.
married, and I was 18.
Oh, 17.
I got married on October 10th, 1943, and I was already there, so I was 18 then, in 43.
You
I
were,
was 16 in 41.
all right, why don't you tell us about how you moved to town, and you're already talking about being married. Who did you meet and when, and what were the circumstances?
Well, like I said, I came out of college because I was sick. Then when we moved to town, my mother kind of nourished me to health or whatever. There's a lot of therapy and physically and whatever.
That you don't remember the diagnosis, you were just weak?
Well, first they thought I had tuberculosis, but it was not. They gave me the treatments and everything, and it turned out that according to a doctor, was that I had a lot of mucus on top of my lungs, and I had to dry that up. And how I did it was that I had to go by the ocean a lot, number one. Number two, there was other things, and at that point I was still in Montellano, in the little barrio, we call it.
Cut. Hold on 1 second. Titi, there's, I don't know what's happening here, but there's like, I want you to face a little bit more like that. It's just like a nasty shrink over there.
Oh, the sun has moved?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, wow. Hold on a second. All right, anytime you're ready.
All right, you are describing the circumstances of after moving into town. Now, oh no, you were describing the
Before I
illness
moved,
that
and,
they had diagnosed.
That I had to take something that was just like iodine,
Uh-huh.
and I needed to go under the sun every day. I had to turn my back to the sun and take
Okay.
until my mother nourished me to health, and that took a long time. Then we moved in. That was
Was your father still
working
working there?
excuse me. That was already the spring of 42, and I was still in the country. After that, that's when we moved into the town. We could have been late 42 or early 43. Okay, and at that point, I remember after I was well enough, my mother, we decided that I should go to a business college to be a CPA. I went there, and again, I took sick, very sick, and I had to go back home. Then I don't remember what it was.
When
it
you
was
went-
too much strain, too much for me. I was too young. I guess I went through too much stress about college, going away from home, which I had never did, and that didn't do me any good.
So you went to San Juan?
I went to San Juan, right
And you
across
had to
Padilla.
stay where?
I stayed with La Nena and Fernando's mother,
Okay.
Fernando's mother and Fernando's father, they were living in the Parada 15 in Santurce.
Stop 15.
Stop 15, and then I had to go to, but evidently everything was too much for me. And again I took sick and I had to go back, and at this point I don't remember what kind of treatment or whatever. Maybe it was just that I had to relax and take it easy, because everything was like, my education was like too much rush or something, and I was never away from home, and evidently I couldn't cope with it. And so I stayed there, and while I was recuperating, I remember I didn't go anywhere. I just had to take it easy. While I was recuperating, they had, there was an army base in Calle, Henry Barracks, and at that time, since that was during the war, they had a lot of, the USO was formed. I saw Bob Hope there, and and a lot of celebrities, and they had a theater there in the barracks, and we went. And I remember they had a hostess where they had, like, the USO club was a big thing, and where they had dances and theater, a lot of things. And they had a hostess which went around town picking up girls to bring, so they could meet the army
Soldiers.
So the soldiers, and dance and talk to them and I remember my mother had to force me to go, and I didn't want to go. She said, "Go, it'll do you good." So the hostess took, "Sure, come on, Eneida." She took me, and they used to send a big truck from the base and picked up with nice girls, not only nice girls. And so I went, and that's where they had, it was more like karaoke, they call now, but not exactly, where we had to sing. And then this man sat next to me, that was Milton, and we started singing, and before you know it, someone turns around and says, "Eneida, he looks just like you look like brother and sister." And from there on, we took a liking to one another, and a few months later we were married.
So he was stationed in San Juan? And
He was stationed in Calle. I met him in
Henry
Calle
Barracks.
because I went back home to nurse myself up.
Uh-huh.
And then, when I felt better, I went back to that school. And then one day I received a telephone call from Milton that he had to see me, blah, blah, blah,
Now
And
you
I-
spoke to him in English.
in English.
And how did you learn English?
I learned English in high school. I mean, in school, all through school. All our subjects were in English, except the Spanish class.
You're kidding.
I'm not kidding.
Okay.
Everything was in English. And all I needed was a little, help from well, anyway.
From the first grade on, all your
everything
classes,
was in English.
and these teachers that you spoke about earlier, that you
They
liked
said
so
in
much, they
English,
spoke to you
in English.
Well, they gave the
A
class in
little
English.
bad, but well, anyway, the books were in English.
I see.
But when the teachers spoke, they spoke to us in Spanish.
I
a
see.
lot.
Okay.
And I do remember that in the 7th and 8th grade, we had an American teacher. One of them was Spanish, but she was educated in the USA.
Okay.
The last. Then the first and second years was a Mrs. Pulling. She was American, born and raised and educated here. And we had a special English teacher.
Here in the United States.
As far as I remember, I had two, Miss Held and Miss Pulling, which were American people.
Pure American.
The other one was a girl from Guayama. She came to the United States. She spoke very good English. Towards her last years in school or whatever, and she went to college in the USA.
Mm-hmm.
She was my teacher, my English teacher.
Great.
Well, anyway, I spoke that I was well, kind of good. We spoke perfect, not perfect English in the matter that we had the perfect
Grammar.
grammar and
Right.
somehow, not slang or, not the ain't and the owned.
Right.
Well, anyway, uh, so when I met Milton, he calls me one day. I was still in that business school. The name of the school was the Greg Shorthand.
Okay.
They call this school. And anyway, he wanted to see me badly. He says, "I'm so lonely. I'm so blue. I miss you, and I want to get together again with you." Da, da, da. And so I always remember that I was with Fernando's mother. They had moved from Stop 15 to the Eleanor Roosevelt, where they made all new houses at that point. Well, anyway.
In San Juan or Santurce?
Well, that was in Rio Piedras.
I'm sorry, Rio Piedras.
Near Santurce. So I remember Fernando's mother says, "Eneida, whatever you do, don't get married. Don't get married." Because she knew what he was, her intuition told her that he wanted to marry me. That he was so much in love that he wanted to marry me. So I went and that was it. I stayed. I never went back to I don't even remember if I went back to the school and then I quit and I came back and we got married. We got married in 1943, October 10th.
Okay, and he was in active service.
He was in active service.
And where did you go then? Did you stay in Rio
Well,
Piedras?
No. We lived in Calle. We got married in Calle and we lived in Calle.
Okay.
But there was this woman that her husband was in the army and he was away because of the war and he had room and she was renting a room, so I went to live with this woman.
Okay.
It was close to where my mother was living and we stayed there.
Who was in your house at the time still? Your mother, your father?
My mother, my father, every now and then, and Elva.
Every now and then? What's that?
Elva,
Your little
Elva,
sister? Your
Lida,
little sister?
and George. Joe
Okay, the
was
younger
gone.
ones.
Joe was gone and Elsie was gone.
Okay.
All that
The
was
younger
left.
ones were still there.
And I was out then, and they were there. Then Lida got married after I did. I had a baby, and
Where did you have the baby? In Calle?
no, I had to go to a hospital in Caguas
Okay.
because I was going under the army, whatever, health insurance or whatever,
Right.
and they didn't have anybody who could take me in Calle, so I went to Caguas, and I had a small hospital that was just starting, and there were not many rooms,
Mm-hmm.
so
So you
I
had
had the baby there.
You had Milton Jr.
I had Milton in what was it, July 1st of 1944.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember I was still in the hospital when all the fireworks was the 4th of July.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I had Milton in 1944 and July.
Where was
I
your
was
Where was your eldest sister at the time? That was Nelsie,
Nelsie? Well, she was in Buchanan.
which is
She
is in San Juan, Old San Juan.
Not really, that's Buchanan, Fort Buchanan. All that is called San Juan now.
Okay.
But where Fort Buchanan was in Bayamon,
Mm-hmm.
between Bayamon and Santurce.
Oh, okay.
And that was Camp Buchanan. There was something like San Patricio all around there. It's all very confusing because
It's all run together now. It used to
Right,
be
it's-
separate, and now it's
it's
all.
all is called San Juan.
Uh huh. And where was Joe? Joseph.
Joe was in the army.
And where was he stationed?
When you mean in 1944?
When you had little Milton.
When I had Milton, I don't remember. I know that he was away a lot. He was out of like Antigua. He had gone.
Okay. Well, what then after you had Milton?
Well, I had Milton. Then I remember between. Then at that point, before I had Milton, Joe came back and he got married. And his wife and I. That was just before I had
His
Milton.
wife Becky,
His wife, no, not Becky. He had his first wife.
and her name
Her
was.
name was Conchita,
Okay.
and they have a daughter.
Okay.
You heard about her that coming back to Joe. What's her name? Carmencita.
Okay.
Okay. How was this? One day I had Milton. No. Before I had Milton, that was in 44. I remember I had Milton in 44 July. I got married in 43, October 43. Joe got married in 43. I came to visit my mother early on a Sunday, and there was nobody home. And my father was opening the door. I said, "What's going on? Where's everybody?" He said, "Well, they went to Treasure Island." I said, "Treasure Island is where all the newlyweds went." It was called that, for honeymooners, mostly. And I said,
And
"Where
this
they
is
went
an
to-"
island in somewhere?
Treasure Island was in Sidra.
Okay.
I don't know if it was beautiful. It's more or less like the rainforest.
Like a camper or something?
No, it's something like the rainforest. but
A
it's
natural
more-
preserve.
Very,
Yeah.
not as big as the rainforest. And then he told me, Joe and Conchita got married last night.
Just
They
out of the
married.
blue. You and
Just
you-
out of the blue. That was another story. That I don't even remember what happened or whatever. And that was that. And it was shortly after I got married, because Milton was born in July, and they had and Joe and Conchita had the first that little girl in September. September. So it was close by, right after I got married. When, I don't know. But
Okay.
it was just before Christmas. And okay, then this girl and I got pregnant. We were both pregnant at the same time. Then we decided to there was a house for rent, a whole house. The people had bought another house and they were renting the house. So this girl and I, Joe's wife and I, took the house.
Mm-hmm.
And we were living there. And as a matter of fact, while I was living in that house, that's when I had Milton. And then she had a little girl.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know exactly when, shortly after that, I moved into the army base with my sister Lida. She had a job in quartermaster at the base, and she was entitled to government housing. They have some nice houses.
And she was alone, or she was
At
married?
that point, she was alone. She had been with my mother, but they had a disagreement of some kind, and then she was alone, and she begged me to come and live with her. So I came and I was with her. She had already been married too, and her husband was away. And so I came to live with her, but then again...
You had the baby and you were
I had
married?
the baby, and I moved in with Lida, and but I didn't stay long with Lida.
So you moved out of
out of
Joe's
the house,
Joe's.
out of Joe's house. Let's say Joe's house, Joe's wife's house,
Mm-hmm.
and so I moved in with Lida, and then I didn't last long with Lida because of her.
Way of
Let's not get it.
her nature.
Her nature, and so I decided I had to leave. So my only option was that since Milton wanted me to come to the United States, so I left.
Was he already in the United States, or he was?
He was already in the United States, yes.
They had called him and sent him to another place,
Yes.
or he
was
just went on
stationed
his own.
someplace else. He was stationed someplace else. Let me see.
Where was he
Oh,
from?
no, wait a minute. Let me go back to, let me roll back.
Where was he from originally? Where was he born? Your
he
husband.
was born in Georgia.
Okay.
Yeah, wait a minute. Yes.
What was his
That is
last
all
name?
right. Now I get it.
Walker.
His name was Milton Walker. And so he was in Puerto Rico, but he was transferred then to the United States.
Fort Benning, Fort. What was the
think-
other one?
I don't remember. He must have been like in South Carolina, something like that. I don't
Okay.
Well, anyway, he was, and then I came to the United States, and he was, evidently he was out on leave, or he managed to get a leave. He must have been stationed quite close by anyway, maybe in Georgia somewhere, or South Carolina. I think it was Georgia. Well, anyway, he picked me up. I came by in an army transport. There were a lot of war brides in that transport, and we arrived in New Orleans. I had to take a train from New Orleans to Chattanooga,
All by yourself.
all by myself with Miltito hanging.
Oh, with the little baby.
Very little baby. It was a hard journey. I was sick all the way in that boat. I was so sick, couldn't get up until I got back to the United States. And I remember Milton picked me up, and he took me to where his father was living in Chattanooga. Chattanooga and the little town where I was supposed to live was one right next to the other, and the name of the town is Rossville, and the state line between Georgia and Tennessee was right in the middle of that town, Rossville. Half of it was Chattanooga, and the other half was Rossville,
Okay.
which is Georgia and Tennessee. Well, anyway, and I stayed with the father at his father's that one night because we had to. They lived in Georgia, in Roseville, in the country, which I didn't like when I got there. Well, anyway, then the next day we went to his mother's, and I stayed there, but I didn't stay there long. I got there December of 44, and by February I couldn't take it. I was too lonesome. Again, it was all kind of mistake because everything was so new to me, and was like ripping away from my family, and I couldn't get used to live with strangers that evidently they were in a way not even a different culture, because I adapted to everything. But I don't know, and I didn't like accommodations, in other words, too. And so I decided to come to New York. I called my Angie, who was living in the Bronx. I said, "You can come and stay with me." So I hopped on a train again, and I came to New York. And I remember Ines and Mary were waiting for me at Penn Station, and then we came.
These are your cousins. Now, how did they come to decide to go to New York?
They had been here.
How long before?
I know Ines came to New York. Oh, Mary left when I was still like in the 4th grade.
Okay.
Angie left after she graduated from high school. I don't know, must have been in the mid-30s.
Okay, Mary was in San Juan living with some relative.
Yeah, but at the time, after a while she came and she was living in Calle between my mother's and Martha's,
Okay.
because she wanted to be close to the other sisters. So
Right.
we all managed to have her here one, you know.
And how did they decide to come to New York afterwards? Or do you remember?
Well, I was too little, especially with Mary. All I know that I was so attached to Mary, and when she left, my eyes were like this. I cried so much because I didn't want her to leave,
Mm-hmm.
and I cried for days.
Mm-hmm.
For days, I still remember that I cried, and
A lot of separation.
a lot
in
of
the family.
separations
Mhm.
because I love Mary very much, and
Mhm.
I didn't want to let her go.
Mm-hmm.
But I think at that time I must have been on the 4th grade or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Then I know Angie left before Ines.
Ines was the eldest.
Ines was the eldest, and as a matter of fact, when I went to when I went to school in the city, in the town, I had to stay with Ines. But then she left for New York. I don't remember. Must have been in 37, possibly 38. I don't remember. So they were here. Ines and the three of them, the three sisters, were in New York.
And this was
So when
because.
I arrived, there were the three sisters were in New York. So
Mhm.
they took me in with one and the other, and
But did they come because they needed work and they?
yeah, they needed.
or-
Yes, they needed. They thought they had a better opportunity here, and they did.
And
which
how did
did.
they learn about this better opportunities? Just word of mouth?
Well, no, well, because there were family here already. My uncle Carlos, you know, Carlos,
And you don't know what brought him here?
Abuelita, Anna, they were all here.
Mm-hmm. But is there something that everyone said it's easier to get a job here?
Yeah,
easier
because
to-
everybody was working, and we saw that the pay was better, and they could, and the ones that were here were, you know, luring the other ones until you can come here and live with us until you get. And that's how they did it, one after
Okay.
the other.
So one by
Yeah.
one they would
They all came.
help each other come over and get jobs?
But Ines came afterwards because she married her husband's sister was already living here.
Mm-hmm.
So Ines came. She had married Manolo,
Mm-hmm.
and she stayed. He came, and then she stayed behind until
He said to
he
come.
he gave her the go ahead to come. That now I'm ready to start my own, apartment or whatever there, do whatever he was going to do.
Uh-huh.
And then she came, and I used to stay with her because she needed company. She didn't want to be alone. But when she came, then I had to come. At that point, like I said, it was 36, 37. At that point, I was staying with her. I'm going to school in town. But when she left, then I had to go back and from the country into town to go to high school by bus. Sometimes in good days we could walk if we got up early. And then after that, that's when I graduated from high school and I went to college, like we already talked about that.
Okay, so let's come back
It's
to
coming
44. You called them and said, I want to come to New York. I don't like where I am.
No, also it was already 45.
45.
1945. It was like early February. As a matter of fact, I left either the 13th and arrived on the 14th of February. I remember it was St. Valentine's Day. Or one of either I left on the 13th or the 14th. I don't remember, but I know it was during that day. And I stayed with Angie for a while.
Now, what did Milton, your husband, have to say about this?
Well, he was away in the army.
Oh, I see. And you just didn't want to stay alone without him.
Just without him, if he had been able to stay with me in Georgia, I might have been able to stay. But once he left, I couldn't.
There was
take it
nothing
either.
holding you there.
Right, And so I came to New York. Then after that, he got a discharge from the army. And he came back.
45,
In
the war
1945.
is
It's over.
over.
And the war was over. Remember May Day? Yes.
Where were you?
In May.
Where were you?
I was in the Bronx with Angie.
And what did you guys do when they announced?
Well, I do remember very well. I was in the kitchen with Angelita, that's Angie, and we saw in the kitchen. You could see there was a high school, and all of a sudden we saw all the students coming out by the flag, and they were singing the national anthem. And I said, "Look, Angie, something is going in high school. What do you think?" He said, "Oh my God, I think the war is over. It's over. Mayday, Mayday." And that was it.
Mm-hmm.
Then we turned on the radio. At that point, there was no TV. We turned on the radio. Sure enough, it was in there. And I remember then some Angie's sister-in-law came over, and we went to Angie stayed home, and we went. Her sister-in-law and I and some other woman, a friend, we went to Times Square. And incidentally, I saw that sailor give that kiss to the famous picture that I saw in person.
How about that?
I saw that. I remember he took her down like this because all the girls were kissing all anybody in uniform. They would go and kiss him, and I would go and shake hands. But this girl was so pretty, and this sailor comes over and puts her down like this and kisses her. Oh my God! And that's how I remember that. I saw that in person. Then when I see the first after all these years, I said, "Oh
you
boy."
wish you had your camera ready.
Yeah, I didn't even have a camera. I didn't even have a camera. And well, anyway, there was so much fuss in Times Square.
Mm-hmm.
Then we came back home. We saw all the hullabaloo, and we came back home, back to Angie's. And after that, then I remember in June, sometime in June, Milton came back, and I remember then we celebrated Milton's first birthday. And as soon as he came back, I got pregnant again.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, of course, you know who was that, Nelsie. Well, anyway, I didn't believe I was pregnant. I was just not feeling well, and then he says, "I think you better go to the doctor."
Mm-hmm.
And he says in Spanish, he was American, an American doctor, but he said it in Spanish, "Tienen cinta otra vez." He said, "You're pregnant again." I said, "But how much? I just saw my husband." He says, "It doesn't matter. I think he came in between." Well, anyway, I couldn't believe that I was pregnant. I thought, "Oh, no, it's impossible." Well, he said, "Well, if you say so." So I was pregnant, all right. Then we got an apartment, and of course by then I was growing. And even before Nelsie was born, there was an incident with a girl where I thought he was going for another girl. And I told him, I cannot take this. I'm getting out of here.
Mm-hmm.
Because if a girl even came to my house, she was one of those demonstrating something like the Stanley Home products or something like that. No, Milton was doing it. And he went to a party. He was demonstrating it was Stanley Home products, I think it was. He was the one that. And then before I knew it, I knew there was something going wrong. And then we decided to go back to Georgia.
Uh-oh.
So
Then
what happened was that I had my own doctor in New York City, in the Bronx, to take care of my pregnant, come on, John, to have my baby here and the hospital and everything. But then I went to there, And I remember I spent Christmas and New Year's there. And then it came a matter of that I had to get a doctor. Would you believe that I couldn't get a doctor to take care of me?
Mm-hmm.
And then I also had the problem that I had to go through the army, and there was no doctors that was going to take me, and we didn't have the money to go private or anyway. And it was a whole issue. So I cannot take this. What am I going to do? So we decided. Nelsie was due in February, right?
Pretty soon, yeah.
And that's when I left. As a matter of fact, she came ahead of time.
Mm-mm.
Because, like I said, I left on February No, by then I left right after New Year's. I'm sorry. I left right after New Year's.
Mm-hmm.
And let's go back. When I knew that I was pregnant, and we found an apartment, and we were living with Mary.
Okay.
And that's when I found out that he was studying to be a dental technician or something like that.
Who was that?
Milton.
Okay.
He was going to school in Manhattan. And then I found out about this girl, whatever. And I said, no. Then we went back. But then I couldn't find a doctor to take care of me and else, my pregnancy and my delivery and that. So I have to go back to New York. There I have a doctor, I have the hospital, I have everything already waiting for me. So I came. And I went back to my doctor, the doctor that I already had, and we came to New York.
You went back to live with Mary?
I went back to, what did I do then? No, by then my mother had an apartment and I came to live with my mother.
Okay.
My mother had 731 Southern Boulevard. So I came to live with my mother, and then I had the baby, and I remember that Annie, I was in the hospital, and Ines contacted the Red Cross, and she managed to find Milton. Oh, because he going back, when he came in June, right, he was discharged from the army. But then, when I came back to New York, behind my back, he went back into the service.
Without telling you?
Without telling me. And I didn't know where he was. But Ines managed to
figure it out.
Get a hold of him through the Red Cross. And one day I'm here, and there's some Milton there at the hospital. He came to see me.
Mm-hmm.
So
that was
then
pretty
after
stressful.
that, let me see what. Then he went into the Air Force, and he was transferred. He was at that point he was in North Carolina when Nelsie was born. That's where they found him, and we stayed in New York I stayed with my mother, and he went back to camp. But then he was transferred to Puerto Rico, to Aguadilla, Borinquen Field, I think was the name of the Air Force. Air Force camp over there. And we were there. We were living there for a while, and then we had an out. I got fed up with it. Then he made some accusations about me that I didn't like, and there were not true. There were some things that, in a way, how do I put it?
Distasteful.
Distasteful or something, but there was nothing wrong, and I couldn't. Then I said, well, forget it. So we broke home, and he went one way and I went the other. And as a matter of fact, I got a divorce in that town where I was, in Aguadilla.
Oh.
I got a divorce, and I left, and I went to live with my town until I came to New York. In the meantime, he had taken Nelsie and left it at Angie's.
He grabbed the baby.
And the
and
Nelsie, because I couldn't handle the both of them. And someone said, advised me, she said, I think you better let him have Nelsie, because you cannot let go of little Milton because he is too attached to you. And Nelsie was very young. Nelsie was not even a year old, I think. Let me see, I don't remember.
But he...
No, I think Nelsie was a year old already, but she was little. So he came and dumped her at my cousin's house. And I don't know, then after that I didn't see him, and I sent the divorce papers, and I had applied for city dwelling, you know, those projects in New York City.
Okay.
And by the time after Nelsie was born, I managed to land one of those. I left for Puerto Rico, and then after that, when I came back,
You went to Angie's?
I went to Angie's, and Nelsie was there. I was with her for a while, and then I moved into the project with Nelsie and Milton
In
New York City.
In New York, okay.
Then I got in touch with Milton, right? And at that time he was in not Jamaica, one of those West Indies islands.
Haiti or I don't know. No. Santo Domingo.
No. I think it was St. Croix.
Virgin Islands.
St. Croix.
Oh, St. Croix.
I don't know where it was. And he was stationed there, and then I don't know how I got in touch with him, and we got together again, and I was willing to try again. He said, now I have an apartment, and you know, I would like for my children to have their father. We can be a family again. And which he did. He sent his things, and then he decided to stop and see his father. At my suggestion, even I said, maybe you should see your family, since you're going to land somewhere around there. You might as well see them, and then you come here. But then he decided to go gambling, and he lost all the money that he had. And he called me, I need money to come home. And I said, well, I don't have any money to give you, so
End of story.
forget it. And that was the end of story. So then the next time I heard from him, I stayed in the apartment, and then again.
This is in New York.
That was in New York City. I had to leave the apartment for personal reasons, and to get away from someone that was harassing me. And I didn't want, it was a boyfriend that I had enough of him, and I couldn't take him. So I came back, and I'm moving with my mother.
With the two little babies.
With the two little babies, and but by then Milton was already, not babies, they were that, well, I'm talking about 54, 55 by then, you know. And and then after that I met Angel Luis in '56, and we got married. And then from then on, you know the rest. We got married. We had 6 children.
You got married and you lived.
We got married in 1956. In 1957, I had Jose. 1958, I had Victor. I rested in 59. In 1960, Andrea was born. In 61, I had Elba. Then I rested 1 year in 62, and Lida was born in 63. Rested 1 year, and Miriam was born in 65.
And this all happened in the, you lived in the Bronx?
In the Bronx, and on 173rd Street.
And what did...
Lisa and I, when we first got married, we were living at, when Manolo was superintendent in a building, and he was entitled to an apartment, and we went to we went there until before Milton, way before Jose was born. And we got our own apartment, and in that apartment I had my 6 children on 173rd Street. Longfellow.
And what did your husband do for a living?
Well, when I met him, he was a probation officer, but by the time we got married, he was a parole officer.
Okay.
He was a parole officer. And,
By the time you had all your children, how many
we had
years?
6 children
Mhm.
between 57 and 65. I had the 6 children. In 66, we moved from that apartment to the one on the concourse.
Mhm.
And then we stayed there until 71. On 1970, he was appointed as commissioner in the parole board.
Mhm.
And then
Appointed by whom?
Governor Rockefeller,
Personally.
personally.
And how did he get to know the people who made that happen?
Well, he used to belong to the Puerto Rican Civil Service Employees Association.
Uh-huh.
It was mainly Puerto Ricans, and then they decided to let Cubans and Dominicans, because as long as there were Latins, they were welcome into the association, but it was always called the Puerto Rican Civil Service Employees.
Mm-hmm.
And since he was a parole officer,
Mm-hmm.
they found out that there was one of the commissioners that was retiring, and the what do you call, was vacant.
The position was
The position was vacant, so they went to push for him. And a lot
Who
of
went to push for him?
the Puerto Rican Civil Service,
Okay.
the commissioner resident from Puerto Rico, who was Manny Casiano.
Mm-hmm.
Then there was Ferrer, who had been the governor of Puerto Rico, and there was a commissioner resident in Washington. They were all pulling for Angel Luis because it would have been the first Puerto Rican to be appointed to the parole board, and everybody was pushing it,
Uh-huh.
and that's how he got it.
Okay.
And I remember when he went for the last interview with Rockefeller himself, all the girls in the office wanted to see this man who everybody seemed to be pushing for him. And when they saw, they said, "Oh, how ugly." They were very impressed, and I
Why
remember
were they
that
impressed?
when that was where Rockefeller was officially appointing him, and that was final. And then he started crying, so Rockefeller took him to an office and told him, "You go here and talk to your wife now." And he left him alone in that room so he could talk to him, and Luis was crying because he was so happy, and Rockefeller was very impressed because of that. And I remember that soon after that there was the Puerto Rican parade, and Governor Rockefeller actually asked for Angel Luis to walk with him side by side at the Puerto Rican parade.
Uh-huh.
And they had to pull Angel Luis, who was already with the association, the Puerto Rican Civil Service Employees Association, and they told him, "You have to go. The governor wants you to work with him." And then when I saw the Puerto Ricans, the Puerto Rican Civil Service walk, and I didn't see Angel Luis, someone came and told me what had happened. I said, "You just wait, he's going to be next to go to the governor." And I remember when Angel Luis came and he pointed me. I was on the grandstand, and Luis pointed at me and told the governor, "That's my wife." And he went like this to me, and I waved at the governor.
You have pictures of that?
No.
Hmm.
At that point, I never bothered taking pictures. There were pictures. As a matter of fact, Lida might have them. Lida might have some pictures, because I gave Lida all the pictures and everything pertaining to her father, because she wanted them,
Mm-hmm.
and I knew she wouldn't lose them, and especially after Ana Luis died, she wanted to have all that.
Let me
She
ask
was very
you,
close to her father, and
these people all pulled for Angel Luis to do this, to get this position. What do you think? What was the reason that you think in your deep
Well,
inside?
Deep inside, well, okay, and Luis had helped them a lot in many ways.
How did he do that?
In the, of course, being a commissioner, there were a lot of doors open for things that they needed. Like they wanted to, the Puerto Rican civil employees wanted something through HUD, HUD, which is to make
Housing and urban development.
exactly. And through the Puerto Ricans and through Angel Luis push, they got it.
And how did he get
It
involved
had
in
to
those
do-
things?
It had to do, well, because he belonged to he still belonged, being a commissioner, he belonged to the association. As a matter of fact, when he was appointed to the board, he was the president, but he had to resign. So the vice president took over, and which his name was John Maldonado, very handsome, and because of his, he was the commissioner, a lot of doors were open. And, he could get a lot of things that he would not have gotten otherwise. But Angel Luis was always very persistent, even before he was a commissioner. He did a lot of things for the Hispanic community, and that's how they know him. And that's why they went to push for him.
Mm-hmm.
Through the Puerto Rican Civil Service Employees Association. That's how he became known, for the things that he did.
Mm-hmm.
And
where was he from? Was he born in New York or
no,
in Puerto
he was
Rico?
born in Puerto Rico, in Calle, Puerto Rico. As a matter of fact, he went to Calle High School. I knew him.
Or you knew him when he was
He
younger?
was when he was young, but since we were in different, he was about 7 years older.
Oh.
But I knew him when he became a teenager, and we went to dances. I saw him.
Mm-hmm.
I never danced with him,
Mm-hmm.
and but he danced with older girls, and maybe my sister Lida. Still Lida was younger than him. We went. In other words, we didn't belong to the same crowd because
Okay.
he was older. And
But he was a big family man. Did he come from a big family?
it was a big family, and they were very close to where his father had to embrace everybody in his house because he didn't have a lot of money, but he had a better he was better than the others, and he had his sisters and his brother with a wife and another child, and this, you know what I mean? And this is the way they help one another, and came from a good family.
What was his family name?
Rivera.
Rivera. His father was Cesar Rivera, and his mother was Victoria Lopez.
And they...
His mother died when he was still in high school.
I see. They were all from Calle.
Yeah, and they were all from Calle. And after that, I got married, and he was in the army. He retired as a captain,
Mm-hmm.
just like Joe. He was a captain in the army. He retired as a captain, and through the government, he went to college. He went to Loyola University in New Orleans,
Mm-hmm.
and he graduated with. Actually, he was going to be a lawyer, but there was a point where I don't know whether it was that the government will only give him 4 years, and he started the law profession, but he couldn't graduate because he didn't have enough money to finish.
Mm-hmm.
So he came out from college, and he came to New York, and he went to a church. He tells me he was leaving and he didn't know what to do, but he knew that he needed work, and he was in church and he was praying, and a priest came over to him because he was crying and he was praying so fervently that the priest noticed it, and he came over to him and said, asked him what was his problem, and he says, well, I'm here all alone. I have friends and that, and I don't know what to do, but I need a job and this and that. And the priest helped him. And guess what? With Catholic Charities, his first job was like social worker for Catholic Charities. From there on, he took the test for probation officer of New York City, and then he took the parole officer's and passed it too, and from parole officer he became a commissioner.
I see.
And he then when his term expired, because that was they are up the positions that was vacant was only 5 years. At the end, somebody else was appointed. Some dirty work was done, and somebody else was appointed. And then he went back to what they called senior parole officer, and to finish, because he didn't want to retire yet, because it was not to his advantage to retire then. But he got the benefits as if he had been, when he retired, as if he was a commissioner. You know what I mean? Nothing, he got like his Social Security and his pension was as if he was a commissioner. Whereas if he had been just a parole officer, it would not have been the same, but they made him a senior parole officer. And he was not as involved with the parolees or anything like that, more or less he can like office work and things like that. And since he knew the ropes, he knew what to do. And then when he retired in 1980, and in 1988 he decided to leave. He didn't want to stay married.
Where is he now?
Oh, he passed away.
That's the one that passed away.
Oh, last year.
Yeah.
That's right, I
He
remember.
was in Puerto Rico. He
Now,
went back to Puerto Rico.
now I'm putting all the pieces
Yeah,
together.
that was him. So, that's
Did you have a good marriage?
Up to a certain point, we did have a good marriage. But then he got he changed. Not maybe it was there and I didn't see it. But it went gradually to the point that I couldn't take him, the way he talked to me and the way he behaved, and he used to go out every weekend, which I didn't mind, because at that point I just wanted him out of my hair. And he was a free man to go and do as he pleased. And then we kind of were separated within the house. By then, of course, we were living in Goshen. And he decided he couldn't live that way anymore, and he wanted to go to Puerto Rico. And I said, you can stay here. I'm not kicking you out. I don't want to leave my children, although they were already most grown up, but they were young adults, and like they were not adults to me. They were I couldn't say the children. And they're old. So they say my children, what am I going to call those adults? And things like that. We had a lot of differences, and but I didn't kick him. I didn't want him to leave. I told him he could stay, but he didn't want to live like that. I can go to Puerto Rico and marry someone else, or be my guest. And he took off, and then he regretted it. When he was finally, the doctor told him that he had 6 months to leave. I happened to be in Puerto Rico, and I went over to see him. He asked me for forgiveness, and I told him that was your decision. And then he asked me to marry him again, which I said, no. I didn't. Because when we got married in court. We have a civil ceremony. And since his first wife had died, now we could marry through the church. And I said, it doesn't make any difference to me, but I don't think I am. And he did regret what he did. And I said, that was your choice. He says, and I'm sorry for that choice he made. the wrong choice.
We're almost out of tape, honey.
Okay. Well, thank you very much.
Where are we?
Eneida.
Okay.
What are we? Are we going on to a third tape? We're not done yet, right?
Up till now, there's not much, to tell about
What-
my children. They're all
We're gonna have to
doing
get
well.
them all.
We'll have to do them one by one.
Yeah. I have 6 happy children. Well, I have 8 altogether, but like I say, that's my wealth, my children.
Mm-hmm.
I,
You're here.
I'm very proud of my children.
They're all great.
Some of them have a little flaw, but I don't love them any less. And I'm very proud of how they
Have turned out.
have turned out to be good citizens and doing well, thank God.
Yeah.
Okay.
And mostly on my own.
Well, thank you very much.
You are welcome.
Okay. Thanks.
Okey-doke. Oh, and now I gotta go to the bathroom.
Kidding.
Yeah.
We better start our dinner.